This is your Dune read-along book. Every time you hear this chime, it means it's time to turn the page in your storybook.
And time for me to take one of the pills that stops me flying into a murderous rage. I don't think it's necessary, but the producer insisted upon it.
Now, if you are ready,
I don't think I'll ever be ready.
we will start Dune, Part 2, Attack of the Giant Sandworms. Don't forget to turn the page every time you hear the chime.
And already I'm confused. Am I turning the page now, or was that an example of a chime? In which case I'm already a page ahead?
It seemed to Paul and Lady Jessica that things could get no worse on the planet Dune.
But then it was announced that James Corden was moving there.
Duke Leto, his father and her husband, had been killed by the evil Baron Harkonnen.
Are Duke Leto, his father, and her husband the same person, or three different guys?
And now, mother and son were stranded in the desert, wandering toward safety or toward death.
Well, there must be signposts somewhere.
As they looked out over the sand, Paul pointed to a rocky cliff in the distance.
We'll be safe up there.
He said,
But if we journey over the dunes, the sandworms will surely devour us.
I think I see a flaw in your original assertion, Paul.
part of their survival gear included a thumper, a machine which beat on the sand and drew the attention of the sandworms.
Yes, said Jessica, that's totally what it's for.
Paul set the thumper in motion behind them, and he and his mother hurried away from it, over the slippery sand. They had gone only partway toward the cliff when they heard the hissing of a sandworm.
It was watching the Michael McIntyre 25th year stand-up special.
The sand began to shake under their feet. Moments later, the thumper stopped.
Run, Mother!
Shouted Paul as a hill of moving sand chased them.
Run, or we're doomed!
Unless Kevin Bacon or Fred Ward can think of something fast.
With only seconds to spare, Paul and Jessica reached the rocky cliffs just as the huge worm burst through the sand and began swallowing the rocks below them. The gigantic worm continued to smash his head against the cliff.
Until he was in the ideal demographic for the Joe Rogan show.
Desperately trying to reach Paul and Jessica before they climbed to safety on the higher cliffs. Just as they reached a high bluff and safety, a bolt of lightning lit up the cliff, exposing a large band of Fremen, Dune's people. The Fremen studied Paul and Jessica, trying to decide if they would be useful to them.
We are in desperate need of hat racks, they concluded.
Finally, Stilgar, the leader, spoke.
The boy goes with us, but the woman will use too much water in the desert. She must die.
By drowning! It's not a good system.
With that, he drew his knife and turned on Lady Jessica.
How'd you like this drawing I did of my knife?
Stop!
Jessica commanded. The voice froze Stilgar in his tracks.
Leave them alone.
He ordered.
She's a Bene Gesserit. Her power will kill me.
And there are still so many knives I have yet to draw.
Chani, a lovely Fremen girl, approached Paul.
What are you called?
She asked.
Haven't you been listening to the record?
Paul is the name my father gave me.
You must have a Fremen name as well. We shall call you Paul Muad'Dib.
It has absolutely nothing to do with the size and inadequacy of your genitals, so don't bother asking the other Fremen what it means.
Stilgar and the Fremen led Paul and Jessica across the desert, traveling a night and a day, until they reached Sietch Tabr, their hidden underground fortress.
Now a premier inn.
Climbing down the deep, dark steps, they finally came to a huge black lake.
This is only one of thousands of lakes we possess on Dune.
Explained Stilgar.
Soon, all this precious water will transform our desert world into a paradise.
Which we're then going to pave in order to put up a parking lot.
Weeks passed. Paul and Jessica were becoming more comfortable in the Fremen world. The Fremen, in turn,
Had it with Paul and Jessica's bullshit.
were beginning to look upon Paul as their new leader, the one their legend predicted would come from another world to lead them against the cruel Harkonnen. Standing on a rock ledge in the Fremen Hall of Rites, Paul spoke to the assembled thousands of Fremen.
Tonight's winning lotto numbers are...
We must destroy the Harkonnen and make Dune ours again. To do this, we must control the spice melange. The Baron and the Emperor himself need the spice and will have to come to us for it. We will be ready for them when they do.
So make sure to look your best.
How, Muad'Dib?
Asked Stilgar.
We will need special weapons to fight such evil.
I have such a weapon.
Zip.
Paul held up a weirding module, the special voice box which he had used on Caladan, and which he had rebuilt for the Fremen.
We will build more of these. I will teach you to use them.
A small fee is involved. It's not up to me. My managers insisted on it.
Then we will be prepared.
How does it work?
Paul chose a Fremen from the crowd
Now, we've never met before, have we?
and pointed to a nearby pillar.
Yell at that rock.
He commanded. The man yelled, but nothing happened. The other Fremen laughed. Then Paul placed the weirding module on his neck, turned toward the rock, and shouted, The stone burst into 1,000 pieces with sudden explosive force.
Instantly giving away their location to the Harkonnens.
We must act until no evil Harkonnen are left.
Paul cried out.
I will lead you, and we will become a vast army, ready to take back our world of Dune.
Months passed,
Yeah, they'll do that.
during which the Fremen armies kept up their attacks. During this time, Paul's eyes had turned completely blue, like the Fremen's.
So Paul Hollywood is a Fremen? Okay.
From Dune's spice, melange. Then one day, Jessica gave birth to a baby girl, Alia, who was born with all her mother's Bene Gesserit knowledge and skills.
And a full set of teeth, which made breastfeeding more painful than the Gom Jabbar.
Although Paul was now accepted as the Fremen leader, one test remained as final proof,
The swimwear section.
a test of courage and skill. He had to ride a sandworm. Paul went out into the desert, set out a thumper to attract a sandworm, and waited, alone on a dune. Soon, he heard the roar of the approaching worm.
Do worms roar? I mean, they're alien worms, so I guess I'll allow it. I'm no Neil deGrasse Tyson-style buzzkill.
He stood frozen, holding a maker hook in his hands, and waited. Suddenly, with a deafening noise, the worm burst up out of the sand. It was huge, over 100 feet tall.
Which makes buying clothes a real challenge.
Thousands of teeth glistened in the 80-foot circle of its mouth. Paul ran beside the sandworm and quickly hooked himself on its writhing, bucking body.
I hope I heard right then.
The worm turned its body upward to keep the sand from hurting its exposed flesh. Then, in one swift motion, Paul planted more hooks in its breathing holes.
I've conquered it! Now I'm a sand rider!
He yelled proudly.
This more than makes up for the death of my father and all my friends.